Buenos días y feliz Cinco de Mayo, everyone. Welcome to the second Q&A mini webinar on Classtime. Today we'll be talking about summative assessments during distance learning and how this can be solved with Classtime, because we've had a lot of teachers ask us now, especially towards the end of the school year, how this can be solved and best done via Classtime. Before I dive into the details, I'd like to just remind you that we do have a limited offer for distance learning for free upgrades to school licenses. So if you're on our website, just click on the banner above and then ask either yourself or someone from your school leadership to fill out this form, and then we will review it and see what we can do for your school. Talking about now the distance learning, so obviously, compared to in a classroom, there's the big question of academic integrity, or the flip side of it, cheating during an exam. While many don't do any summative assessments this year, some teachers still want to try it or do it in a way. So this is what we're going to be focusing on in this mini webinar. So obviously, there are various layers to how you can assure academic integrity. And maybe, first off, something I need to share is that there's no 100% certainty for academic integrity, right? That's the same in every classroom. It's especially hard, when you're digital, and even harder when you're not even in the same room, but via distance learning. So there are many challenges you'd have to solve, and I'll try to show you how you can mitigate it as much as possible in this short 10-minute webinar. So obviously, the fundamental first thing, and I'm not going to go into this in big detail, is designing different question types, right? Fact-based questions are the easiest to Google. You can try different question types such as sorting or hotspot or free text responses, which just test for different skills and make it harder to Google. But there's always also the need for fact-based questions. So I'll leave it up to you, but we recommend a healthy mix of different question types to just make it a bit more challenging in an online environment. The second thing you can do, and we've seen this if the internet bandwidth allows it, is to combine any type of real-time assessment with video conferencing. So you could set up Google Hangout or Chrome, Zoom, or any type of other video conferencing, and just also have your students film themselves while they take the assessment, so that you have a bit of a better overview and can assure that it's the students working on those questions actually. Then there are several things that you can do within Classtime. That's what I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to be working with a math test right now. It's pretty simple, but it will make my point. So that's the goal for today. So obviously there are different settings, and I'm going to go through various settings that might help you one by one. But the first thing you can always do is set a timer, right? So make it harder for students to Google answers, or incentivize them less to do so by setting a timer, for example, 20 minutes, right? Which means that when students then join their session, they will be able, if we go here, to start their session. And once they join, they will have a timer visible that will give them 20 minutes. Once they click start, the timer will start, right? And once it's over, they can't answer any questions anymore, and your answers here will be stored safely, right? That would be one of the first things you can do. Then, as you've seen right now, I joined with a nickname. You might want to verify that it's really the student, and you also want to avoid them to join with other nicknames in parallel. So one thing you can do is enforce Google, Microsoft, and Clever authentication. This honestly requires students to have these accounts. So maybe you're a Google school or a Microsoft school, then this will work. And the way it looks is that when you then join a session, you don't have the option to enter with a nickname. So you need to log in with your name. So if I do this now, I'll take my private email. It is me and only me who logged in here, and I can verify this here now with authenticated with a Google account. So this is one of the advantages that you have if this type of accounts are available. So just make sure that this is checked. You can combine this with a timer that I just took out, but this just gives a lot of time pressure and also the inability to log in with a nickname to preview the questions in parallel. Another thing you can do is obviously if you can't do or don't want to do like a live video conferencing, is to also schedule a session, right? So you can say between 10 a.m. today morning, right? And let's say 10:30, that is the time that you need to solve this session, and you will have 20 minutes within that time frame to solve it, right? So students have high pressure to perform in that time, and they can't do any tricks outside of it. It will automatically lock them out of a session. They won't be able to join it before or after those set times. There's nothing you have to do anymore once that time is set. And then, this is the next layer. So depending on your abilities to, set up certain applications on students' devices, if they're old enough or their parents can support, we always recommend the Safe Exam Browser. The Safe Exam Browser is an open source, free licensed browser system. And without going into technical details or showing you how to set it up, what you need to know is that students download the software, and this can be done for Windows, Mac, or even the iPhone, iOS, tablets, for example. They will download the software, and it will open up a specific browser within that will then be in a so-called kiosk mode, meaning that you will have access to their entire system, so you'll know exactly what they're doing, even outside of the browser. Before the exam, all you'd have to do is send them a little file, tell them the password, they log in with it, and then they can join Classtime through the browser and solve the exam. So they would open the Safe Exam Browser as you see it here, join Classtime normally, and then you would have full control and see exactly what they're doing, and you can also deactivate certain features for maximum control. This is pretty advanced, so let us know if you are interested in this. We're happy to help. Again, this is open source, this is completely free, and this is especially made for securing online assessments. Then there's always, obviously, the issue that students can communicate, right? Even, especially in distance learning, when you're not in the same room, they might be chatting on the side or discussing anything outside of the computer, and it's hard for you to maybe see what they're doing. So there's one thing where you can just make it inherently more difficult. And the way we would do this is with what we call now the session creator, with the playlist. So if you have a set of questions, let's say here in this case where I have 22 questions, and I want to ask maybe 15 questions in my assessment, I can shuffle them together and basically give groups of students slightly different versions of their exam, which makes it really hard to communicate and match their exact assessment. So let's assume we did this one, and you would just say, okay, you randomly select, you see now 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. That's 4 out of 6 questions from this one. Then you can go back. Then you say, okay, I'll take out of these, I'll take 4 random questions. And then from the last one, you want to take maybe 2, right? So then now, as you see, oh, sorry, I did this wrong. I add them. 2, you'll see that I have 10 questions added from 3 question sets totaling 14 points. If that's what you want, great. What you can do now is you start a session. And you can then additionally say shuffle answer options, so that if it's like a multiple choice, every student will have a different sequence of answer options. And you can also shuffle the questions so that they're completely shuffled. So all of this is now mixed and matched, it's just mixed and shuffled. And you have this specific code that you can send to group A of students, say, like 10 students out of 30 students. Then what you do is you go back in your browser, and now you just change it up. So you remove those 2, and you just pick other 2 questions, for example, right? Then you can go here, just click on this one, and go to another one. And you can remove these 2, and then add maybe just these 2. and do the same here. Remove, add, for example. So now you have, again, 10 questions, but slightly different. You start a new session again, and you have a new code. So this is the code you give to group 2 of the students, right? And again, even within that group, there's the shuffled answer options and the shuffled questions. And again, you can still add the session timer and authentication and the scheduler to make it really hard. What you do then as a teacher is basically you go to the sessions, right? You can always see, and you can have multiple sessions run in parallel, right? So you give this code to the first group, this code to the second group, and have them join individually. And in the end, you'll have 10 students join here and 10 students join here, all about the same topic, but slightly different questions and also shuffled within, which makes communication extremely difficult and even inefficient if you are able to also add this additional layer of a timer and a scheduler. And just one more second, I'll show you how this looks for a student. It's here. So again, I enforced login with Microsoft. And Google, I meant. So now I have 20 minutes. And you see, it doesn't actually show the question titles as we have, for example, here. What is the answer to this equation? But just as question 1, 2, 3, and like you don't know, you'd have to go through all of the questions, find the right question, communicate with your friends. And even if you have like the answer options, they're different for every student. So it makes it extremely difficult for students to communicate and cheat. So these are the few tricks that we recommend. So just to repeat again, you can use the session creation to create different versions of the same test by slightly shuffling up the questions. And then you can always give different codes. You can set a timer. You can shuffle answer options, shuffle questions. We recommend, if it's possible, to enforce Google, Microsoft, or Clever authentication, the scheduler for sure. And then, as I said in the very beginning, use different question types, right? Use a categorizer if you can. Use a sorting if you can. We don't have a sorting in this example. Use free text responses. Just ask and test for different skills and challenge the students within that time frame to make distance learning and summative assessments with higher academic integrity. If you have any other questions, feel free to add it in the comments or email us at team@classtime.com. We'd be happy to help you individually, also to set up the Safe Exam browser. And if you have any other questions unrelated to assessments, summative assessments and distance learning, let us know and we'll handle it in our next webinar on Tuesday in a week. Thank you very much and enjoy the week.